Have you ever heard the sound of an old locomotive speeding down the tracks? That iconic whistle, the steam hissing the rails shaking. Now imagine all of that happening at over 160 km. Sounds unlikely. Then you should know that railway history holds surprises that go far beyond brute force. There are locomotives that not only carried progress, but also pushed the very limits of speed. They were built in different eras, countries, and contexts, but all have one thing in common. They are brutal machines with powerful engines, colossal structures, and such incredible performance that they're still remembered with reverence today. And the most curious part is that many of these beasts went unnoticed by the general public. But today you're going to discover the real monsters of the tracks, locomotives that flew low over the rails and helped shape modern transport. Ready for this journey through time? Stick with me until the end, because the last one on this list is so absurd that many people still doubt it ever really existed. South African Railways Class 25, built in 1953 by the North British Locomotive Company in the United Kingdom. The Class 25 was one of the most ingenious steam locomotives ever used on the African continent. It was designed to meet a unique challenge to cross long distances through the Kuru Desert in South Africa, with minimal efficiency loss, even in dry regions with few refueling stations. The great innovation of this model was the use of a steam condensation system, something extremely rare in locomotives. Instead of releasing steam after use, it was cooled, turned back into water, and reused. This drastically increased range and efficiency, making the Class 25 ideal for 8 environments. The engine featured 3 cylinders powered by a boiler operating at 225 psi, producing over 4,000 horsepower. That allowed the locomotive to reach speeds of up to 120 km/h, a respectable figure for a vehicle weighing more than 200 tons while pulling long trains. The traction system drove the rear wheels, supported by coil spring suspension that provided stability on curves and firmness on long, straight stretches. The transmission was entirely manual, operated by internal valves and levers that required constant attention and skill from the engineer. Visually, the Class 25 commanded respect. A wide chimney, long body, dark paint, and a subtle but functional aerodynamic profile. The deep, rhythmic chugging sound echoed across the dry fields as a true symbol of power and motion. It was used to transport freight and passengers between strategic hubs in South Africa, such as Kimberley and Deer. Its performance and efficiency made it a key element in the development of the country's rail network during the 1950s and 60s. One interesting detail is that after retirement, some units were taken to the United Kingdom, where they were restored and are still on display on historic railways, one of them still operating with a fully functional condensation system. Impressed by this powerhouse crossing the desert, then get ready, because the next machine on the list was built to tackle mountains, and not slowly but with plenty of speed. Union Pacific Challenger 3985. Built in 1943 by the American Locomotive Company, the Union Pacific Challenger 3985 was a direct response to the logistical demands of World War II. It had to cross the Rocky Mountains with heavy loads and meet tight deadlines, a mission that required more than just power. It needed speed over challenging terrain. With 4 cylinders split between 2 articulated drive assemblies and a 6,290 cubic inch engine, this locomotive produced approximately 5,000 horsepower that allowed it to reach speeds over 110 km per hour, even with long freight consist behind it. The transmission was completely manual, relying on a complex system of valves and regulators that required extreme precision from operators. Its suspension used reinforced leaf springs, and its 46/64 traction system provided ideal weight distribution for tight curves and steep grades. At about 37 millimeters long and weighing more than 270 tons, the Challenger 3985 was a true fortress on rails. Its metallic roar and massive white steam plumes were unmistakable, drawing attention wherever it went. Initially used for heavy freight, the 3985 is restored in the 1980s by Union Pacific itself and began operating on special excursion runs. During these trips, it maintained its original performance, reaching near top speeds even in scenic settings. In fact, during one of these commemorative trips, it traveled over a 0 km with passengers on board, an event that became a milestone among rail enthusiasts. Now, if this locomotive already impressed with its size and agility, Imagine what Union Pacific had in mind when they decided to build something even bigger. Union Pacific Big Boy. In 1941, Union Pacific decided it needed a locomotive capable of hauling incredibly heavy loads through mountain ranges without the help of auxiliary units. The answer was the creation of the Big Boy, and the name says it all. Built by Alco, this machine remains one of the largest steam locomotives ever constructed. With 4 articulated cylinders, a 6,250-cinch engine, and an estimated 6,300 horsepower, it could reach 130 kilometers per hour, even with more than 30 rail cars behind it. Its 48 and 84 traction system and reinforced spring suspension ensured balance even on long curves and steep climbs. The transmission was fully manual, operated by internal valves with extreme precision. Visually, the Big Boy was a moving fortress. Nearly 40 meters long and weighing over 540 tons, it dominated the landscape wherever it passed. Steam blanketed the rails like fog, and the sound of the pistons roared like rhythmic thunder. It was used on routes between Wyoming and Utah, hauling coal and other industrial materials, especially during the war effort and post-war period. The most impressive part, one unit was restored and returned to operation in 2019. During its historic tour, thousands of people lined the tracks to relive the golden age of steam and hear the roar of Union Pacific's largest locomotive once more. Think size and speed don't go together. This monster proved otherwise. But what comes next shows that the British also knew how to fly down the tracks with a whole lot of class. 34028 Eddystone. Built in 1946 in the United Kingdom, the 34028 Eddystone is part of the famous West Country class, a series of locomotives created by Southern Railway to operate on express lines in southern England. The name comes from the Eddystone Lighthouse, a symbol of resilience against the sea. And this locomotive lived up to that spirit. Designed with a focus on lightness and speed, it was equipped with 3 cylinders and a 250 psi boiler, delivering around 2,300 horsepower. That allowed the Eddystone to reach speeds of up to 145 km/h. An impressive performance for a steam model that carried passengers between coastal towns and busy urban centers. The gearbox was manual with conventional valve regulators, and the traction acted on the 6 rear driving wheels. Coil spring suspension gave it smoothness on curves, even on the winding tracks typical of the British countryside. Visually, it stood out. Aerodynamic fairing, elegant paintwork, and a lower profile than many locomotives of the time. It was smaller than American models, but made up for it with efficiency and agility. Its sound was sharper, but just as memorable, especially when accelerating out of stations. The Eddystone was mainly used for express services between Bournemouth Exit and London. And even with diesel engines emerging in the post-war period, it remained active until the end of the steam era on British rail lines. Today, the 34028 is one of the few survivors of its class. Restored with historical accuracy, it operates on tourist railways and at special events, taking passengers on nostalgic journeys across historic tracks. An interesting detail is that during the restoration, old newspapers used as thermal insulation were found inside the cab, materials that had remained there untouched since the 1950s. Elegant, fast, and full of history, the Eddystone proved that a locomotive doesn't have to be huge to become legendary. And speaking of legends, the next one on the list combines tradition and TWWR 473 Castle Class. The Castle Class was launched in 1923 by the Great Western Railway in the United Kingdom and quickly became a symbol of efficiency and speed on British express lines. Designed by Charles Calais, this locomotive was created to replace the earlier Sete series with a focus on greater performance. It was equipped with 4 steam cylinders, a 225 psi boiler, and produced around 2,000 horsepower. This allowed models like the Philly Castle to reach speeds close to 145 kilometers per hour, rivaling the fastest trains in Europe at the time. Its gearbox was manual with traditional operating valves, and it had rear-wheel traction. The coil spring suspension ensured stability even on long journeys with high-speed passenger cars. Visually, the Castle Class was imposing with its long body, large wheels, and GWR's signature green paint. It conveyed both elegance and power. Its long, high-pitched whistle became unmistakable at British stations. It operated on routes like London-Bristol and London-Plymouth, used for both royal journeys and first-class services. In fact, one of the locomotives in the series was chosen to pull the British Royal train for several years. Even after retirement, many Castle-class units were preserved. Some, like the 4079 Pendennis Castle, even traveled as far as Australia for historical events. If you're enjoying this ride through the fastest beasts ever to run the rails, you know what to do. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell, because every week there's a new video with machines that defy logic and speed. And if a machine from the 1920s was already that impressive, the next one shows that the steam era still had plenty of power left in the decades that followed. Norfolk and Western 611. Launched in 1950 in the United States, the Norfolk and Western 611 is one of the most refined and fastest steam locomotives ever produced on American soil. Part of the J series, it combined advanced engineering, aerodynamic design, and more than enough power. Powered by a 6-cylinder engine with a 300 psi boiler, the 611 developed over 100 horsepower that enabled it to exceed 180 km in tests and maintain cruising speeds above 160 km on commercial routes. An impressive feat even by today's standards. The gearbox was manual, operated by sturdy levers with rear-wheel traction and spring-reinforced suspension. Its rounded aerodynamic fairing was designed to cut through the air with minimal resistance. It was used on routes like Norfolk-Cincinnati, offering passengers fast and comfortable travel. After being retired, the 611 was restored twice and still operates today in events and special trips. During one of those exhibitions, it attracted over 100,000 visitors in just 1 week. A true railway phenomenon. And if this American train flew down the tracks, the next one holds the title of fastest steam locomotive in history. DR-18201. Built in 1961 in East Germany, the DR-18201 was born as a bold experiment to build a steam locomotive capable of breaking speed records even in an era already dominated by electric and diesel engines. Its engine featured 3 cylinders, a boiler pressure of 245 psi, and an estimated 2,900 horsepower. In tests, it reached an impressive 180 km per hour, becoming the fastest steam locomotive ever built in Germany. The gearbox was manual with a complex system of regulating valves. Traction was rear-based, supported by reinforced coil spring suspension, allowing stability at high speeds even on Europe's curvy rail lines. With its striking aerodynamic lines and vibrant red paint, it looked more like a modern high-speed train than a traditional steam locomotive. It was a fusion of advanced technology with the charm of the past. Although it was built on the frame of a previous locomotive, the 18201 was practically a brand new machine. It was used in special services and is now considered a central piece of German railway history, still operating on commemorative trips. And here's a lesser-known detail. Its construction was so advanced that even during the Cold War, engineers from outside the Soviet bloc recognized its value as a true railway masterpiece. But while Germany was focused on speed and innovation, the next model shows that in the UK, tradition and performance walk side by side in one of the most respected series of all time, LMS Coronation Class 6220. Launched in 1937 by the London Midland and Scottish Railway, the Coronation Class was created to compete directly with GWR and LNER on Britain's express routes. The 6220 named Coronation was the first of the series, and it made its debut by breaking records. It was powered by a 4-cylinder engine with a boiler operating at 250 psi and delivered around 2,500 horsepower. In tests conducted before its official launch, the Coronation reached 181 km, making it for a short period the fastest locomotive in the world. With a manual gearbox, rear wheel traction, and coil spring suspension, it offered outstanding performance while maintaining passenger comfort. Its aerodynamic design, blue fairing, and silver stripes drew attention wherever it passed. It operated mainly on routes between London and Glasgow. Carrying elite British passengers with punctuality and elegance, it was the pride of LMS and a symbol of national engineering. Today, the 6229 Duchess of Hamilton, one of the class's sister locomotives, is preserved in a museum with its original fairing, serving as a reminder of an era when British railways competed not only for market share, but for speed itself. And speaking of competition, the next model etched its name into history with a record no other steam locomotive has ever beaten. LNR Class A4468 Mallard. Built in 1938 by the London and Northeastern Railway, the 4468 Mallard is still the fastest steam locomotive in history. Created by legendary engineer Sir Nigel Gresley, it was designed to break records, and it did. Its three-cylinder engine, 250 psi boiler, and advanced aerodynamic design produced around 300 horsepower. On July 3, 1938, it reached 102.8 km/h, a speed still officially recognized as the world record for a steam locomotive. The gearbox was manual with rear-wheel traction and a spring suspension specially adjusted to withstand the stress of top-speed operation. Its smooth fairing and rounded profile were inspired by the movement of water droplets, hence the name Mallard, which means wild duck. It was used on express routes between London and Edinburgh, and even outside of speed tests. It regularly maintained averages above 50 mph in commercial service, an astonishing feat for the 1930s. After retirement, the Mallard was preserved and is now on display at the National Railway Museum in York. In 2013, it was reunited with all the surviving A4 locomotives in a historic event that attracted crowds of enthusiasts from around the world. The sound of the Mallard at full throttle was so loud that, according to accounts, from the time you could hear it coming long before you saw it. And if no other steam locomotive has ever topped that speed, what can we say about the next one? An American beast so massive it seemed impossible to build, but it was. ERRS-1, the big engine unveiled in 1939 by the Pennsylvania Railroad, the PRRS-1, nicknamed the Big Engine, is still considered one of the largest steam locomotives ever built. And it wasn't just big, it was also one of the fastest. With a six-cylinder engine, a 300 psi boiler, and an estimated 500 horsepower, the S1 reached speeds over 160 km/h in regular operation, and according to unofficial reports, may have exceeded 200 km/h, putting it in the same league as the Mallard. Its traction system was a unique 6-4-4-6 layout. At over 42 milliliters long and weighing around 270 tons, it was so large that it had difficulty navigating standard railway yards. The suspension was custom engineered, and the manual gearbox required a highly trained crew to maintain stability at such high speeds. Its futuristic design with chrome fairings and Art Deco lines was a highlight at the New York World's Fair, where it became a major attraction. Despite its impressive performance, the S1 had a short life. Only one unit was built, and it was retired after just a few years due to maneuverability challenges. But the impact it left behind is still felt today. In fact, the S1 inspired generations of designers and even served as a reference for locomotive visuals in animations and films. A machine so big and so fast that even though it's been forgotten by many, it became a legend among enthusiasts. Throughout this journey, we've seen locomotives that weren't just big, they were fast, bold, and ahead of their time. Machines that challenged the idea that power and speed don't go hand in hand and prove that even on rails, it's possible to break barriers. These weren't just transportation tools. They were feats of engineering symbols of entire eras and, in many cases, pioneers that still inspire today's high-speed trains. Now tell me, which of these locomotives would you like to see up close? Which one surprised you the most with its speed? And if you could pick one for a final journey on the rails, which would it be? And before you go, give the channel that extra push to keep growing. Drop a like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because that tells YouTube you enjoy this content and helps it reach even more people who are passionate about incredible machines like you. Every week, there's a new video with real stories, technical curiosities, and the wildest vehicles to ever cross the world. See you in the next video.